So I know myself, I'm definitely a rocket. I want to shoot for the stars. I want to push myself to extremes in all facets of life. And I've been told by friends, you've been dating a lot of anchors, and that's kind of what throws you off in your alignment. And that's why these relationships don't work.
Can we go higher? Can we go higher?
Hey everyone, welcome to Just What I Needed, our latest episode. I am so super excited for this particular episode. Esther and Paul.
Hi.
And Alexis. Hey
Hello,
Alexis.
So today we're going to go all in about partnerships. This is a big one. And I know that we think about it all the time. So it's about romantic partnerships, business partnerships, all types of partnerships.
I mean, it's so important, right? It's who you have next to you needs to be it needs to be what you need, right? And you need to be that for each other. And it seems obvious, but it's not always. It's something that people. I know that I have a story to tell about it, but but there's so much about how things are in your life when you are aligned with your partner and when you're not. So I think we have a lot to dig into today.
Well, let's just get real. If the person around you gives you anxiety, that should be like red flag number one. So I think the stories we have to tell is when we felt anxious in our past. If you're constantly having to, what is it called, damage control and feel anxiety, whether it's in business or romantic, that is not propelling you forward. So
I'm wondering if we should let Alexis introduce herself. We have a tendency to just dive into these conversations.
Yeah, go ahead, Alexis.
Without letting our amazing guests say something about themselves.
No worries, no worries. So I am Alexis. I am a life coach in training right now. But I've had some amazing experiences with Dr. Paul and Dr. Esther. And, my background is a lot of communications, interpersonal things. And so I do have to say, naturally, I have heard a lot of people's struggles with relationships, whether it's getting into the dating scene, marriage, all in between. I tend to be that person that is a safe space for people to really unpack those things. So I have learned a lot from the outside, but also me myself being in the dating game as a millennial with all of these apps and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? This is insane.
I don't think I know that I am more like your mom and dad's generation. So I am thankful.
Paul's going to speak for himself because I am not.
No. I said I. I said I. So I have never had the experience of having done online dating.
I did a lot
apps
of.
And all
I did
of
a lot of online dating. The online was not as sophisticated, but I did it. Match. What was the other one? eHarmony. I did all of it. Met some really nice. Actually, I had a very good experience on it. I met some really nice people. They would even come with they knew I cared about environment and people. They didn't come with shirts that were I care about this. Even came branded on the dates.
Wow.
I know.
So I remember back in the day there was the one, I don't remember which service it was, that had the 29 dimensions of compatibility or whatever. Did you do any of those? Was that like the eHarmony or one of those?
Maybe. It was a long assessment.
But is there an assessment? Or
Yeah,
it's not
eHarmony had a whole assessment. Match didn't. But I don't remember. Maybe they did, but yeah. The eHarmony one was long. But let's go back to
Sorry.
we're
not
talking
to derail.
We're talking about assessments here, but let's go back to the conversation about how your partner can propel your down. Alexis, start with what learned through. I know she says she's a coach in training, but Alexis has been coach / safe space her entire life. This is just formality. But go ahead. What have you learned in your lifetime? You want to share it with others?
Yeah, definitely. So something that I've learned is that as an individual, you need to decide whether you are an anchor person, you can be in one place, you're okay with I guess for lack of a better term, the simple life, or are you a rocket? someone who's like, I want to achieve, I want to do all of these things, because that very much will let you know who you should be with. So I know myself, I'm definitely a rocket. I want to shoot for the stars. I want to push myself to extremes in all facets of life. And I've been told by friends, trusted friends, they're like, you've been dating a lot of anchors. And that's kind of what throws you off in your alignment. And that's why these relationships don't work. And I've seen that from clients who are like, I'm trying to improve my life. I'm trying to move forward and build this momentum. And my partner is just not there. And so I think a really important question for a lot of people, from what I've seen from clients, family members, friends, and all of these relationships is, is this person in a certain season, or is this truly them? And then how does that affect you in your life and your goals and dreams?
This actually makes me think about the values assessment we do, because the values assessment tells you whether you're doing it by cards or you're doing it through our assessment, right? Whatever it is that you choose, knowing your values is important, and your motivation. It tells you what that profile is, right? Like if you have, we were just coaching someone yesterday, if you have a lot of variety, growth, right? All these things, they indicate that you're a rocket. Or if you're someone that has all these security values, right? That's the anchor. And so already the values, if you were just to do that screening of values, and also it makes me think about the workbook in terms of like the legacy you want to leave, right? If your legacy is about, I want to improve this local sphere in this community or my immediate family, the scale of your legacy matters. If your legacy, it's like, I want to do million people and travel the world and live in different places, right? Your obituary is rocket, and the other person's obituary is anchor. There's misalignment. And I know Paul and I talk about this all the time, like about how do we ask our exes, had just done that exercise of obituary or done the values, we would have been like, we're not in alignment at all. And similar to you, right? Both of us dated people who were also anchors, right? And married people that way too. Second marriage. And hashtag, right? But I think also it's interesting because both Paul and I have a rocket and an anchor parent. And because this also goes into that, we're not going to go too much into therapy realm of things. But when you have that, right, and even though we realize now that that's not always the best pairing, you sometimes think, oh, as a rocket, I need someone to ground me. But that's like, I think like our parents' generation, even though Paul and I are different generations, our parents are the same generation. There was a lot of like, you make it work regardless type attitude, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot different. Even if they were not in a full alignment with their values, it was all about, well, let's come together on that one family value and make it work, right? But I think nowadays we can look beyond that type of generation lens and be like, okay, this is not just about survival and making it work. It's about propelling. And I think that's the conversation we want to have today, right? Our outlook should not just be about let's make it work and survive. It's about let's make our dreams come true. So yeah, in our past relationships, would we have survived? Absolutely, right? Would it have been okay? Sure. But it would have been sacrificing the rockets. We're also rockets. That we were? No, And I remember being on, and I think that's something that the online things were not really understanding about me in the past, because all the dates I get matched with were anchors. And it was like defining, because I care about community and family and compassion, that meant I was an anchor. When actually, no, not necessarily. I still value meaningful growth and ambition, all stuff. I still care about people, but I'm still a rocket. And so it would put me with people who are already like third date going, I have this townhouse and we can already look at the future and all stuff. And I'm like, stay in Miami? Are you kidding? Oh my God, I can't do that. Hives. Or even like, I remember like at different countries, I'd be like, people would be like, look, I have this house and we can live forever. I run away. And then these men later would tell me, why'd you like ghost me and you ran away? I'm like, because you were selling me an anchor. And I was like, ah. And then where I got tricked was when the anchors were trying to sell me the rocket dream, which was not true. Like, I think they wanted to believe it's true. They thought they would like it, but then when they were actually experiencing it, they're like, no, I actually want to live in Texas or Florida, and I want to live outside the country, right? So I don't know. And what do you think, Alexis?
There was a lot to unpack in what you just said.
Oh, I know. So I just went on my ramble.
But it's true. What I loved about what you said is that opposites do attract, right? Because we also think of like, oh, you're the yin to my yang kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then in the long term, or over certain instances, like you mentioned, living. So some people, and I'm first gen Mexican, so it's like a big deal that you live near your parents, you live near your extended family, and that's really normal. It's actually kind of expected in some families. But then you might be with somebody who's like, that sounds great. I love that. And then maybe you get married further down the line and you're thinking, I actually want to travel. I want to go see different places. I don't always want to go to your parents' house for Christmas and New Year's, or like,
Yeah,
I want to do different
exactly.
things. And so it does build.
It builds, and that tension builds. I think that's why I like the values and legacy as being the filter, because then you kind of know, what do they really want in 40 years and in 60 years, right? When things get comfortable, what's that vision you want? I always wanted grandiose, I always wanted rocket. And it's like it's a filter to being like, where is that person's mind? And also I do want to say is that we always think we can change people. People don't change. The value's the same. And you can still, even with values alignment, if you share it, there's still yin and yang, right? I will say, like, Paul and I have different, we have similar values, but how we express those values are different. I mean, as you can tell from the podcast, I'm a lot more extroverted than Paul, and he's more grounding, and I'm a lot more rocket, but he's grounding, but not an anchor. He's still about growth, variety, curiosity. We still have that values alignment, but he expresses it more in grounding, and I express it more in an enthusiastic, flamboyant way. but that's
no one has ever described me as flamboyant, I don't think.
So that I'm saying me. So that is a type of yin yang, and I think we need to change the definition of yin yang, that we can still exist and like we still have that foundation of values and legacy, and how we express it can be yin yang, but not in terms of the limitless life you want to create.
Definitely. And I would say, I love that you talk about definitions, because I feel like these are a lot of conversations that we're not having on how we define love, how we define relationships, how we define closeness.
Yeah.
I was recently listening to Layla Hermazi talk about her relationship with Alex, and she was talking about everyone's very concerned about the physical proximity, that you don't realize that you have an emotional and like a communication gap that makes you so much further and distant from your partner. That is such a bigger problem than constantly being together all the time. And that blew my mind.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. I actually heard her say yesterday too about definitions too, about powerful woman, right? That she's like, yeah, I get up at 4:30. I manage the team, I'm this and that, but I want to be home at 5 to have dinner with my partner that's outside of work. Like, even though people are like, oh, I see you all day with him. She's like, yeah, but I want time with him that's not work related, where we talk about, I don't know, the thing we're baking together and the thing in this. And people are like, well, you can't be both, and that's not necessarily true. And it's how you define how you want that partnership. But I think that I love about her message, and of other really powerful couples that have been able to grow together, is your partner propelling you or holding you back? And I think that's the big thing. And that goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. Do you feel anxiety around this person? Are you holding, because anchor has another meaning too, not just anchor in terms of like not wanting to be a rocket, but are they holding you back with their own work that they're not doing? Are they open to coaching? Are they open to therapy? Are they open to dealing with their shadows? Because if they're not, right, you start to grow, and if they start to stay stagnant, right, then they're trying to hold you back and being like, the insecurity, the holding, the this, the that. And if you're not willing to grow together and it's not propelling you and you're doing more babysitting and damage control, it's not.
I mean,
That's not for
I think
you.
it goes back to a lot of what you were saying earlier. Like, I think right at the beginning, like, is this a person that gives you anxiety, right? Because regardless of whatever categorization you put, relationships are hard, and
Yeah.
they take work, right? And is this a person, regardless of however you're putting them into some sort of category, is this a person that you are willing to do the work with and for?
Yeah.
Right? And it makes all the difference in the world.
And you feel it in your body first. Maybe you don't know, but if you're feeling that, I felt that in my last relationships, and I couldn't put like words to it, but I didn't feel safe and at peace. I constantly feel like I had to explain everything I was doing or stop doing to make them feel more powerful. And I love that you said about work, because it does take work, but it's not work all the time as people think. Like, you can either, I think there's two paths. You're either constantly having to put band-aids on the issues because you haven't done the deep work, and so you're constantly doing that little work, or you front or middle end it in our case, right? Like in our case, like in our middle of our relationship, if you think about it, we then spent 2 years in therapy and all the coaches you can think of. Like, I know people are like, oh, it's not, yeah, we treated ourselves like NFL or basketball NBA players. We were like, we need all the coaches. Why do they have coaches and we don't? We can't have coaches. And if we want to be a star team, we need the best. So we had therapists, we had sex coach. Yeah, I say it here. Yeah, we had that intimacy, because you there's so many traumas you go through and you need to resolve. We had the family constellation one to think about our family dynamics and how we were going to handle that. What else do we have? We had a lot. We had the human design. And we still do the human design, but like, I mean, then we packed it during that time, and there was so many things. Like, that's when I learned that I had anxiety. Then I didn't even know I had anxiety. That's when I learned I had, like, my phobia, PTSD thing, right? You learned also the dynamics between you and your mom, right? And you do it independently, and then you come together, and then you do it independently, do it together. And it was a rough 2 years, because every time it was like every session, every month, I remember Paul's face when he'd get out and he's like, I can't talk for like a day.
It's a beating. It's
He's
brutal.
like, I'm still processing. He's like, I had no idea that I had been like dating people like my mom my whole life, and then we had to decide, right, after those 2 years of doing the work and processing the work, right, along the way we got to revisit, are we still compatible? Do we still want to work with each other and still come from a place of love? Like, can we grow together? And then, but that's it. We did that, and the rest has been little maintenance. Like, maybe, every couple months we do something. But so you either put that heavy work, or you're constantly putting band-aids. And we decided to do that because we were constantly putting band-aids before. It was like we were fine until a crisis, and we were fine until a crisis. And I was like, no, we can't live like that. Let's put in the work, and then we don't have to put any more band-aids anymore. And I think that's where people think, well, I don't, like, that just seems like a lot, and I don't want to do it, or I don't need it, and I'm fine, or I don't even want to go there because I'm scared. But if you don't do that work, you're not going to be in a partnership.
I think what's really important is that you mentioned you had a willing partner who was open to grow. And I know that I've met a lot of people who have partners who are afraid to expand, afraid
Yeah.
to get into the icky parts of not only the relationship, but also themselves, right? Because
Yeah.
relationships are like this huge mirror that are just going to show you every single insecurity you've ever had in your life. I heard having children is like the same. And so not only do you have to confront the other person and work that out, but you have to confront yourself and be honest with yourself. Am I living my authentic, true, 100% life that I want? And then how does this person fit into that? And how am I supporting their dreams as
Yeah.
they're supporting mine? What does that reciprocity look like? And so I feel like a lot of times people are like, well, he said this and he wants this, or she said this and she wants this. I'm like, okay, but what do you want?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's spot on. Like they don't if and, I mean, I'm sounding very nice right now, but like when we were back there, remember Paul? I was like, are you gonna do the work or not? It's like, because if you're not gonna do it, I'm out. And it doesn't matter how much love we had for each other. I was like, I'm never gonna like keep the kids away from you. None of that. Like it doesn't have to be ugly. But I had a vision of where I wanted my life to be. And Paul, you should talk about it. You always say having, and I think everyone should feel this way. He always says relationship with me is not 1.0.
No, yeah, yeah. Relationship with Esther is not like relationships 101. It's like doctoral level.
So, I mean, but I think we should all treat ourselves that way. That, you know what? We're not relationship 101. So, do you want someone like who's going to come in and wants the, you know, just, oh, I just want to scrape by? Or do you want them to put in the work? It's kind of like giving a scholarship. You're going to give it to the person who's going to put the work. That's how you should treat your partner. Are they going to treat you like a doctoral degree? And Paul was like, yes, like you are.
I'm almost done with my thesis.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair though, through that process as the partner that was asking for it, that process was instrumental for me because I realized how much I was also contributing to the issues. Like I saw myself as the rocket. But guess what? I didn't realize I was high functioning anxiety. I didn't realize the downsides of being a high achiever. I didn't realize how much not enough balance I had. How I was transferring my anxiety to my children. It was actually like world shattering, mind shattering. I don't even know what the word is. That in the end, I ended up having to do just as much or more work than Paul on myself. And I also didn't realize how much it was affecting him, right? And I think it made me a better partner in the end as well, right? And sometimes we think, oh, it's just the other person. You know what I mean? In a relationship, you don't even realize what you're contributing. That's why both have to do the work. And I know we're talking about heavy into relationship, but maybe talk about how you felt during that process.
I'm, you know,
because we're talking about how like most people, I would say the majority of men are the ones that push back.
I mean,
yeah.
I like to see big picture things, right? So, I think one of the interesting themes that's coming out is like we're talking about relationships, right? We're talking about two people coming together and forming a unit, but the truth is that you have to be individually okay in order to make that unit, right? Like the other person is not going to fix you, and as you said, you're not going to fix them either. And if either one of you is I don't want to say broken, but I mean either one of you is still sort of like in process.
We're all in process.
We're all in process, but I mean you have to acknowledge that you're in that process, and you have to like take those steps, right? That relationship, like even that relationship can become an anchor, even if both of you feel like you were born to be rockets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't know how to support each other,
yeah.
how to, and I love the whole yin and yang thing, right? Because traditionally it's sort of this light and dark, and it's very much about opposites. But I completely agree with what you were saying. It's more about how is it that you complement, and how it is that together you make sort of that whole. Right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can say that for me, not to, I mean, it was really difficult. Like in the whole process of coming into a relationship that is positive and uplifting and supportive and all of that is not something that was ever modeled for me. Right. I definitely grew up in the environment of you just stick it out. You stick it out because that's it.
And don't talk about anything.
Exactly. And you don't talk about anything. And the thing that you talk least about is your feelings. right? So I did have a question though. And maybe I think maybe this question is for Alexis, if she can give some insight. Because one of the things that you were talking about, like you talked about going on a lot of these like these internet dates, and these guys after just a couple of dates are throwing the fast forward in the relationship, but what they were throwing you, what they were offering you was
the mad tricks, exactly.
Was safety and security.
Yeah.
Right. And so my question is, do you think that that is the expectation that men have? Is that something like you're the man, you're supposed to be the provider, you're supposed to provide the safety? And so maybe, I'm sure they thought that they were showing you what a catch they were.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I don't know. I'll give Alexis a chance.
Definitely. I think that, I love listening to Dr. Scott Galloway talk about like the dating crisis in America, both like for females and males, and what does this mean for the future? And I would say like, yeah, men are definitely measured by their economic worth and what they bring to the table, even in like economic downfalls. But Paul, you're the economist. You can talk more about that part. But it does affect, from what I've heard from like male clients and like male friends, it does affect that sense of confidence and self-worth. And so I think there's a lot in society that, we tell young men and boys, like, this is your role, this is what you do. And if you can't do that, then like, what do you bring to the table? And I'm not going to lie, like growing up, my dad very much prided himself, on doesn't matter what happens, I will always provide. And so my lens as an adult, I look like, okay, if you can't provide emotional aspects, and this was very much of like my dating life in my early 20s, if you can't provide emotional aspects, that's okay. I'm not really used to that. But what's normal to me is that you bring home a paycheck, we have a house, and we have like Esther said, all of these little metrics of stability and success, right, quote unquote here, from society. And so I think a lot of men lead with that, which I think for me in my 20s, yeah, you have a car, cool. Like, you've got a motorcycle, wow. But now I'm like, but what about emotion? What about feelings? Are you a compassionate person? Do you communicate well when you're upset? How do you communicate to your partner? How do you work through problems? Like all of these things that I think we don't really give men the space to develop those kinds of skill sets and show them that they have value in having those skill sets. And as I was reflecting, I was like, oh my gosh, in creating your Limitless Life workbook, the second exercise of like talking to your circle of like what you bring, your talents, like all of those things, I would love to see that information on your dating profile.
Exactly.
To me, that's way more valuable.
Yep. Because that's how you've impacted people. And I want to see their vision, right?
I'm hearing a new app. Idea for an app.
We might do it. But it's true because, like, when we're talking, right, I would go on these dates, and it's true. I would actually feel bad because they would show me all their safety. I won't ever forget dating this firefighter, super nice guy, hot, whole thing. But he's like, he's telling me about all the, his house and his things and the overtime. And he was so, and he did it. And what I admired about it is I told him, I admire your bootstrapping. You know what I mean? That you made this happen for yourself. But then I was like, when I asked him about the vision in the future, it was like, okay, kids, there was no more growth after that. And that's when I was like, this was just a metric, not like my trampoline, right? And that's when I was like, no, it's not for me, right? And I did feel bad because they felt like, oh, I am a catch. I'm giving you everything you want, right? And it's just a lot of pressure. Rather than, I think that's a lot based on scarcity mindset, because rather than being like, when you do that legacy exercise of 10 to 20 years, that person may not have any money now, but do they have the dream and vision? I remember dating somebody in college, and then he had this vision that he was going to be have this billion-dollar industry in another country and the whole thing, and he made it. But I knew that he would make it because he had this like vision and he was executing already on it. And I think that's part of like that exercise. Like, what do people seek you for, right? I would filter out, does the person help people execute and make things happen? Because it doesn't matter if the person doesn't have money now, that person making it. When I met Paul, you didn't have, we didn't have anything. We were fellows. But, but we both were like, I remember we met on this project and everyone said no. And Paul and I, we'll learn it and we'll do it. And I was like, that's the right person. Because that person's going to go afterwards and get it, and is not scared to go in and get his hands dirty and willing to put it all to make something grow. And
Well, let me switch the conversation then, since you opened the door a little bit. We've talked about like personal relationships,
Yeah.
but then there's also like professional relationships.
Yes.
Right. So like my question, I guess, for Alexis is like, what do you see in terms of what makes a good partnership in a professional sense? Is it the same? Are there other things that like you would want to consider as you move forward with a professional relationship?
I would say I think I find them very similar, because I've been reflecting a lot on how much you respect somebody to engage in a partnership, whether that's professionally or romantically. Do I value what they bring to the table? Do I look up to this person? I think that's also very important. But also, do I trust this person? Because, for some people, business is even more intimate than an actual, romantic relationship. Like, this is their baby, their project. And so when you're partnering and trying to, build something better and greater together, it's really, do I know that this person has my best interest and the best interest at heart of everybody in the company, or whatever it may be, to be able to move forward and learn and grow. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of similarities. I wouldn't treat them any differently, actually.
Yeah, that alignment in values is still really important. You brought up something super interesting also that I think really applies to relationships that we hadn't brought up before, which I think is that admiration piece. I think is super interesting and super important. It's something that people I think don't really talk about very often. Like I know that it's really nice to be in a relationship and partnership professional with somebody that I look up to, that I admire who they are and how they go about, living their lives.
But it also ties to our conversation earlier, right? That we have to move away from just the metrics, because the admiration needs to be admirations of values and impact, not necessarily if they have a house or certain security. Because like any material thing, right, that you buy in a store, you like it for the first 3 days, maybe the first month. And then you get bored of it, right? So you can't base it on what material things they have, because it's not long lasting. What's long lasting is the values, how they act on their values. Even if one of the values you admire is wealth, it's not going to be enough for you that they have this one thing now. If you value wealth, you're going to want them to keep acquiring, and the process to which they acquire and build is what you admire, not necessarily the thing they have right now, right? And so it's really important about like that, and that's where the admiration and the alignment comes in. But there was something that Alexis brought in, that business is actually even more personal. Actually, like, when I met Paul, actually, I think the question, and I had heard this, I don't think I ever told you, is can I be in business with this person? Like, if I had a business, could I do it with them? Because you just said, like, I think a lot of times when we think about relationships, we think about, partnership. But would you open a business with them? Because in a marriage or in a relationship, you're still like everything, finances, all this stuff. It is like a mini business. But most people don't think about that. They're like, a business is more risky. What's more risky than a marriage and having children? So ask yourself, can I be in a business with this person? If your answer is no, then next, right? Because that means that, business brings out all your wounds, all your deepest traumas. Being in entrepreneurship, that is when you are a book wide open. And so if you can't do that part, then maybe you should consider someone else. And I think that partnership part, That's a journey, because I think even like not even business partnerships, but like if you have a business, who you're serving and the client, if you don't have some values alignment, you're not gonna like it, right? I think there was this, Erica Kramer had this good exercise, I remember in her workshop, and it's like, do you like them? Right? You have to like who you're partnering and who you're doing business with, right? And if you don't like them, then you shouldn't be doing that, right? They shouldn't even be a client or someone you're serving.
I mean, that's an interesting question, right? I mean, both of you are in the coaching world. I mean, we're all in the coaching world, but I mean, you two specifically are pretty deep in that. How does this sort of partnership discussion relate to, like, who do you choose to work with as a client?
I mean, I'll pass it to you, Alexis. I can just say that now I only take clients that have full values alignment. If not, I'm not working with you. But I mean, it was a journey to get to this point.
Yeah, I would say like finding, I guess, the ideal client, if we're going to get into that. There's a vetting process, just like in dating, right? So for me, I have a whole survey. I have them walk through, where are you stuck? How long have you been stuck? And like, what are you hoping to get out of this relationship that we have for the next 9 weeks? And what does progress look like to you? So I'm kind of like getting a feel for where they are and what they want to achieve. And then we have the discovery call where we really hop into like all of the details, get into the nitty gritty. So I feel like my survey is like, I just swiped on you and yeah, like I'm liking what I see. The discovery call is like, we're grabbing coffee.
You're having coffee, exactly.
Yes, exactly. And then, by the end of the coffee date, we're deciding, are we going to go on another date, kind of a thing. And so for me, with clients, I love to see that I'm stuck, but I'm tired of being here and I want to move forward. I don't know what that looks like. I kind of like need this partnership to build and like co-create a plan forward. So I know that I need somebody's help, but I can't keep living like this anymore. And for me, that is a great sign. And it's like, okay, you're motivated, you're dedicated. The pain of being where you are is significant enough that we can build traction forward.
And honestly, Alexis, that whole vetting is the vetting for a partner, right?
Exactly.
Is this? It's the same. That's what you want in a partner, right? You want someone who can do that too and is going to move forward, right? You're not going to. It's the same filter. You're not going to have someone that's just sitting there. And I think, I'm moving away from one-on-one coaching, right? I did that for years, but I think for me in the beginning, it was hard for me to understand, like, people might say they are something, but then they aren't. And so it took me a while to read between the lines. And now I have found the spot with the values assessment. That's why I'm obsessed with it, because it's the first thing someone has to take. And once I read the values assessment, I know exactly where their value alignment is. And so if their values are totally far from mine, it's like I already know after that one session that it's not going to work out, because, I'll leave them with that one session and don't upsell more because we don't have an alignment of values. So my first thing is, do we have an alignment on the values hierarchy? All those things, and the motivation, because I can help someone that's 2-3 chapters behind me. I can't help someone that's completely different from me. And I think that goes back to the yin yang theory, right? So I can help someone move up that if I know them really well. And so I'd be doing them a disservice. But in the terms of like, that's still a little, the client is alignment of values, but I think in partnership, like who we hire as a contractor needs to also understand in our team, like, do we have full values assessment? I think it's even more deep. It's like, are we fully aligned with values, because you're trusting them with your brand? And it's just like dating. It has to match, and they're the spokesperson and for you and acting on your behalf. It's almost the same thing. And I think about it as, are they part of my family? Can they be part of like my chosen family and really match completely? So yeah, it's the
I
same
think I think
thing.
you're opening a whole other discussion that I think is super important though,
Yeah.
because now you're kind of drifting into the lane of frankly leadership and corporate leadership, right? Like, wouldn't it be a great leader who has this team, and this leader says, you know what, we are all going to be a little family here.
Yes.
This is what we're trying to construct. Let's see how our values align. Let's see how we do all of this stuff together, you know?
Absolutely. And you have to hire people that match that, as we are growing our team, you know what I mean? Because we've worked for organizations where the team was given to you, and the team doesn't always match. And I know that in my team, when things have gone sour, it would certainly, like things, is because there's a complete misalignment. But when you have the chance to own your own business and grow your own team, you got to make sure there's alignment, motivation, in values, and the way you work. And when you have that, it's amazing. Because I want to give an example. Like, I'm self-actualization, Paul's growth. The worst thing is for us to have to micromanage anyone. And
Or to be micromanaged.
Right? So I already know from the values, if they're strategic, if they can do action plans, right, and they have that, everyone who I contract with, zero micromanagement. You can have that team that you're just like, update me. And I mean, Alexis, we worked together. It was beautiful because we had an alignment of values and approach, right? Or if you're someone that needs that ultimate, like you are like 75% safety and you need that, right? Then you're going to have a team that's just like you. And then the micromanager is not going to feel like micromanagement because they all need it, But for some people like us, that's too much. But for somebody else, that might be the way to work. But that's why you need to find that's matching.
That's why the alignment in values. But I think that there's an interesting phrasing that can be taken to, like I think people are almost burned out, tired sometimes of hearing leadership speak. You know
It's
what I
what
mean?
we do. Yeah.
But I know, but I think it would be super interesting to reframe it as a relationship lens. Like you are entering into a relationship with these people, right?
And losing sleep over it.
And losing sleep over it, and you're something that you're creating together. It's like a family. A family, you're creating something together. At work, you're creating something.
What do you
together.
think, Alexis, from your experience in like working with different people? I mean, like, this come from the lens of like working. We've all worked for other people, and even choosing a job. This matters, right? That's another relationship.
But also, like, it's a huge investment of time. This is time that you could be spending with your loved ones, with like, doing hobbies or other things. I think what this also made me think about, what I love about what you were both talking about, is that you can't teach values. You can teach other skills, but you cannot teach values. And this actually brings me to an example that I have from going on a date, actually. I was like really
What was his
impressed
name?
with this person. I can't remember. Not important. So I was going on the date with this person, looked him up on LinkedIn because that's what you do when you're an Ivy, right? You're trying to like find your power couple here. And I'm like, wow, I'm super impressed. This person was like in corporate banking, yada yada yada, getting an MBA, and we're on this date, and I'm talking about like my background in Peace Corps, humanitarian work, USAID kind of stuff. And he looks at me as we're sitting on this park bench, and he's like, wow, you're like a good person. I think a relationship between you and I would be very successful because you would teach me how to be a good person. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean you're not a good person? I don't want to be with a person who doesn't have like the same values, or like there's no way I could teach you that. Like that's something you have to develop yourself. And so that's when you were talking about, when you're bringing someone into your company, like the values need to align. And I'm like, yeah, not so much the skills. So I'm like, if you are in this example, right, this quote unquote good person, but maybe you don't have an MBA, and maybe you're figuring out how to be an entrepreneur. You don't know how you're going to get there, but you have a plan. That is so much more valuable.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. This reminds me, when I had my team music, and even now when I hire contractors, I could care less about their certifications, about their things. Alignment and values first. Everything else can be trained, right? We can train you. I can't train you to be heart-led, you know? I can't train you to be someone who is like mission, purpose oriented, right? Who believes in the cause and what they're doing. I can't, right? But I can teach all the other things to an extent. So I completely agree. We need to change the way that we're looking for people on our teams, right? Like we need to move away from like, 10 years of experience, 15 years of experience, X thing in this. Like that doesn't, like, what if you know what I mean? If you have these values like we do, which is like, heart-fed, service-oriented, whatever, you could have the genius at your corner, right? That's so good at this, and yet they haven't had the opportunity, right, to have all those checklist things. And when we think about our beneficiaries, even like we're talking about partnerships, but even like who we serve. When I think about like, we both know Robinson, he's a fisherman, now entrepreneur, right? In Monte Cristi, right? He had the vision, he has no degrees, but what he has built is phenomenal, right? With the community, because of the vision, because of the tenacity, right? And so there are things that we have to look now beyond these criterias, and that goes with dating and with partnerships, right? Because things can be acquired. This also reminds me, like, I'm going to sidetrack the conversation too a little bit. Is that remember I was talking about that I learned a lot in my therapy, right? Too, and I think there's this tendency for us to want our partner to have everything, and this means in business, this means in personal, this means in work, whatever. Of the things that we may want for ourselves, but it's so much easier to be like, well, he's not doing it, or she's not doing it, or they're not doing it. I'll give you an example. Like I remember being like, for a long time I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I remember feeling like, oh well, I didn't marry an entrepreneur, my chance is gone, and I don't have an MBA, and it's too late, and all these things. But that's, again, the savior mentality, right? Like, our partner's not here to save us. Our partner's there so that we can propel together, whether in business or relationship-wise, but they're not there to save you. So if there's something that you want to do and something you want out of your life, you have to create it for yourself. So, and I had to do that work myself of like, okay, I need to do the work of becoming an entrepreneur. I have to do this. And then together we learned it and we propelled it forward, right? But it's not about one of us saving the other one. Or even when you're hiring someone, like, we're in a process, right, of like having sales development. We're still learning sales. Paul and I, right? We're not going to be 100% dependent on the person that you're bringing in to bring all the solution and saving it for you. You still have to learn it yourself. And so we have this tendency to want the other person to become the savior, whether in any type of relationship. And it's not about finding someone to create all the solutions for you, but like I think you said it, right? It was like the compliment. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Alex?
No, yeah, I would also say that, like, if I'm ever on a date and I hear somebody kind of have that I'm looking for a savior language that they don't realize, or maybe they are kind of out here looking for some kind of like sugar daddy, sugar mama kind of scenario, for me, it's a red flag
Yeah.
because I'm like, what are you doing for yourself? And it also made me think a lot as you were sharing. That also goes into the criteria when we're trying to find somebody. Is this person 6 foot tall? Do they make six figures? What do they like? The DC favorite. What do you do? What do you work for? Kind
Yeah.
of a thing. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, like in your case, you can be the entrepreneur. You can be the person making six figures. You can be the person doing all of these things. And that's what I like about what Paul said earlier as well is like, are these two people coming in as two wholes? Or are you looking to find someone to make you whole?
Exactly. And that's where resentment comes in, right? Because then you put all this expectation on someone. And the thing is that safety is an illusion. So that person may have that job in 6 figures, but are you going to love them if they lose their job and their 6 figures? Are you still going to be there for them when they do that? And they have to rebuild? Or if like anything, like they get into an accident, are you still going to, you know, and they're no longer 6 feet tall? Anything could happen, right? It has to be much deeper. I think you were going to say something. Yeah.
I had a question actually for Alexis, and I like to move from sort of big picture thinking to operationalizing, right? So you're on a date, right? Like how easy or how awkward is it to ask the questions or have the conversations that start to give you an understanding of
Oh, you
what
didn't
this
even know I
person-
was doing that to you in lunch.
I'm asking Alexis.
You know what's
Like
funny?
how do you start to like suss that out of the person, you know? Obviously without them knowing.
I mean, it's funny because I have I guess, a fuerte approach to this. A lot of my friends are like, no, it should be light conversation. Like, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? And I'm like, who did you vote for in the last 4 elections? You know, like, what is your stance on women's rights? Like me having rights, like fully diving in because I just like I want to get to it. I want to know
Yeah.
like what are your values, and I think stances on things politically or socially will give me that fairly quickly. And I'm also looking for that on the indicators on their dating profile. How do you
Ooh.
talk about certain things? How are you positioning yourself? Interesting. Okay. So I'm like kind of like coming up with little clues there. But yeah, if you're one that wants to ease into it, I think that's great. But I think for me, I'm like, no, I want to know from the get-go because this is time and money that either you and or I are spending. So
Yeah.
let's get to it.
And if you don't know Alexis, the reason why she's asking that first is because she has tolerance, diversity as 2 big of your values,
Yes.
right? And so you're going
Huge.
straight into the question of values alignment.
There's this female Latina comedian from like I think she's like from the Bronx. I don't know if you've ever seen. I can't remember her name, and I apologize to her for it. But she's hilarious. But she has this thing about how she doesn't cute flirt. She comes up to guys and she says like, "I like you, son." You know, talk about taking the direct approach. You know, it's really funny. Sorry.
No, definitely. And I think, for a lot of times, like, I hear a lot of men, particularly, like, oh, I spent this money and, I didn't get a call back or whatever. But, like, wouldn't you want someone to tell you over a coffee, like, this is going to work or not? I mean, I get it. Coffee is like $8 now. But, like,
Yeah.
you're going to know right away in $20 whether you want to continue with this person. So I think it's really important. And I find that a lot of the questions that I have on a first date, I have some friends who have never asked their partner and they're married. I'm like, wait, you got married and you never talked about that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's actually kind of where I was going, right? Because like I was married before, and I think that the biggest failure that we had was a lack of it's called a lack of communication, but it's at the end not asking each other the questions that really mattered.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, like there was a tremendous amount of what seemed like paper compatibility, but if we had the conversations openly about values, about alignment, about the future, about legacy, all the things that we've been talking
Yeah,
about.
she values security, motivated by security, and you were motivated by growth.
And it's not to judge any of those things. Like
No.
even like as we were
No, 'cause
talking earlier.
there's a lot of people who are motivated by security.
Or as we were talking earlier, the anchor and rocket thing. It's not even to put a judgment on people who are sort of in that anchor category.
No,
it's just that's what brings you joy and
you need anchors who were mentioning earlier with Robinson. He's an anchor on a rocket, right? Rocket for his community, but an anchor in that community, right? You know that if you're with him, you're staying in that region. But he's very clear on that vision. I plan to never leave here. Right? So that's the first question. What are your next 50 years? He's like, I'm here. But I'm going to grow it, but I'm here, right? So you have that clear from the beginning of where they're going.
yeah.
That's why I like both. It's the legacy and the values, because definitely, like, I think with my ex-husband, we had a lot of values alignment. He was very into service, adventurous, whole thing, but we had a very different legacy. His legacy was like just like having a secure, stable family, while mine was like, I want to have change for millions, you know? So even though we both were heart driven, I wanted to be heart driven outside the micro. Yeah. It's hard, but you were talking about time. But it's the same in business, right? Like you were just saying, you have a discovery call, you have a survey, you have to make calls to clients, to companies. You know, we don't do workshops for any type of company. You have to do some research. So I know those men are like, I don't want to spend money, but if you were thinking about it as a business, you do have to put in that time in that, because it is a big commitment on who you go business with and who you're providing it with, and if you feel satisfaction from that, and you spend that time doing that weeding out process over and over again.
Go ahead, Alexis.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, even just thinking about like the coaching and client relationship, I like to tell a lot of people what I've learned in my coaching school is a lot of the magic happens between our sessions. And I feel like with relationships, that's also really true. Like, yeah, we are going to spend this time together, this quality time, but our lives are hectic. We have work, we have like other commitments, our families, whatever it may be. And so a lot of the magic happens in between our interactions of what we're doing to take care of ourselves, what we're doing to, grow our own dreams and aspirations and become the person that we want to. So when we do have those interactions with our partner, they are like the best of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would say it even extends to kids, and there might be some parents that are listeners on this call, but one of the best part of, I think, doing that 2-year therapy coaching we did was to treat our kids that way as relationship partnerships as well in the family unit. They each have their own value alignment. They each have their own legacy they want to build. It's not about us imposing our own purpose that we didn't fulfill, which is what happens when you don't fulfill it. It's about helping them propel theirs. So if you haven't dealt with your stuff, you're going to pass it on to your kids. And I think, we do every year with them about like assessing the relationship, like always. I'm like, my daughter and me, my daughter and Paul, me with my son with Paul. Like we do this cross thing of analyzing, like what could be better, what could be stronger. We talk about our values. We talk about what we want to grow, what we want to do, right? And we revisit that. And that was also work. I mean, we also invested in a lot of therapy and coaching in them as well as when they were really small. And now it's paid off. This is what we're talking about, the payoff. We're living now the payoff. And now the therapists are like, they're doing great. But it's because we've created an enabling environment, right, of growth, of communication, values alignment. And they don't necessarily have the same values, but we can support them in finding their own alignment of values, right? And the things that they're interested in, the partnerships they want, and the projects they want to pursue, and the sports they want to pursue, and improving and listening and creating that. So it even goes beyond that, right? To our parents, to our kids. I mean, and our parents are harder because they have to also be willing participants. The kids is a little easier. You can be like, you're going to do this work. And then when you leave, if you don't like it, fine, but we're going to do this work. Where your parents, well, that's a whole other thing if they're willing to, and siblings. But they're all types of partnerships.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Okay.
So like we've had this whole discussion and we've talked so much about values alignment and all of that. What is the role of love? Where does love come into all of this?
Pass it to Alexis there.
I would say the role of love is that patience. A lot of what I've been thinking is this whole idea, Esther, that you and I have been talking about delayed gratification. And I think in love, it doesn't always come when you want it, but it comes at the right time when you're ready, is what I hear from a lot of folks. And so love is very much patience, it's kind, it's caring, it's kind of like that glue, and it's something that just builds as we get better. And it's this, I would say love is just like this dedication that I want to continue to show up and I want to continue to be better.
I love that. And I love what you mentioned about delayed gratification because my daughter asked me, I want to marry someone like daddy, you know? And how long do I have to wait? And I was like, well, I didn't meet him until my 30s. And Paul was 40, right? And so, and she's like, oh my God, that's so far away. And I told her it's better that you wait for the right person than I was pressured. I mean, that's the whole book, right? Chasing the American Dream. I was pressured to meet that metric before 30, which I got married the first time. And again, there's nothing wrong with him. It was just misalignment. But I was rushing it to meet this metric and this pressure of society. And I think you're talking about delayed gratification. Just wait. Because wait for the right alignment to happen. And sometimes I think it happened later because I didn't know myself fully. I had to let go of that societal stuff. I think you did too, that whole journey to be ready for it. Like you said, ready for 201. What do you think? What do you think about the love?
I mean, like I think there are a lot of us who feel like we are romantics at heart. You know what I mean? That feeling of love is what makes the work feel good in some ways. You know what I mean? But it's kind of hard to describe because I'm chuckling a little bit and I'm stumbling because I'm remembering that I had this friend in graduate school, and you're in graduate school and you're geeking out on everything. And economists believe that we can quantify anything, right? We can have an equation for it, we can optimize it, and all of this, right? And so, usually in economics, when you are talking about an individual's happiness, it's your own optimization function, right? And then, however, there's the possibility that someone else's happiness could be part of your happiness as well, and there's equations for that and how you do that. But then there is this sort of like it's like a zero. It's supposed to be like a 0 to 1 variable kind of a thing. That's the percentage of how much that other person's happiness affects yours, right? And they call it like the love quotient kind of a thing, right? And it's super silly, right? But it's
actually kind of cool.
It is kind of cool, right? And then I remember we were having this whole discussion about it, about that sort of love quotient, and it was one of those things where we had this friend who was, it's irrelevant that she was Russian, but she was Russian. And she looked at us and she said, what if the love quotient is bigger than 1? And we were just like, oh, whoa, like that means that you care about sort of that person's happiness even more than you care about your own. Anyway, so it's a whole interesting thing, right? About love. Love, by definition, is a partnership, right? Love is this idea that you are bringing together your happiness and how you go about it with this other person. And so I think that actually the discussion that we've had in a lot of ways has been about how we go about it and the technicalities that go behind it. But at the end of the day, even love itself is that partnership, right? That the best love is the one that is aligned in terms of values. The best love is the one that uplifts both of them in that relationship.
And it could
right?
be love romantically, in business, and everything. Because I remember when I had a team, like I cared about every single person in my team. I couldn't just separate it. Yeah, so when I think about love, I also think about love that we're sold, and I remember I suffered through this before I went through that 2-year coaching therapy, is that love for me used to be this grandiose Disney thing. Like I needed the the surprise, like vacation, the over the top birthday, and all these things, you know? And I remember the first couple years before we went to therapy, I remember Paul, I used to be mad at him at every single one of my birthdays, remember? And he was like, and it was really, Paul would suffer, and he's like, I don't understand, why is every single one of your birthdays like really dramatic? And it took after that work that Paul shows me love every day, not in these grand moments, but these little moments add up to a lot. And when I did that work as to why did I think love was only these grandiose romantic moments? Why was I not seeing it in the everyday? And that's the work you have to do yourself. And when I realized that, like now, it's like I was practicing for this interview completely in Spanish yesterday. And I told Paula a thing, and I'm like, I want to be like Spanish immersion completely for like like a month, right? And then I started to notice like he was playing Spanish music throughout the whole day. And I looked at him and I held his hand and I almost cried. And I'm like, that's so romantic. Like, you remembered I
So
told you
sweet.
that I've been so worried about this interview. And you've been playing little music here and there and at the gym and like things. And those are I think so much of these little things
I
that
mean, if Bad Bunny can't help you, nobody can.
but it was these little things, like to me now that's my definition of love, right? That you thought about my values, that you knew what was important to me, the support I needed, right? And we need to move away from this commercialization of love, which is like instant, grandiose, and more about, is this person propelling me forward, supporting me and my dreams and visions? And that could be whether it's your team or your business or your partner. But yeah, I love what you said too, and like this, delayed gratification of, and I think even more than delayed gratification, it's more like delayed gratification is one thing of waiting for the right partner, and then there's also like, don't miss the micro things.
You know, I wanted to bring up one other thing. Sorry, Alexis, if I'm cutting you off here, but I was thinking about one of the things that we talk about, and I hear you saying this, Esty, is we talk a lot about synchronicity, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that it requires you to be open. There's an
Yes,
openness
that's true. We haven't talked about that.
that needs to be there, right? That you need to be open to who and what the world brings into
And
your.
yes, can I add something? And
Add it.
believe that it's possible, because I think that's what we should, like, that you have to believe that you deserve it and that can exist. Because everyone around me told me I would never find a Latino man that was sensitive, that would cry, that would take care of the kids and cook and also support my dreams and just go
Unicorn.
wherever I want to, be adventurous. And I remember everyone telling me it's impossible. And I remember drawing this person, thinking about them, writing it, and then I gave up on it for a little bit. I'm going to tell everybody who's listening, like, don't give up on it. Draw it, visualize it, manifest it, because it does exist. Because as I was drawing that and manifesting that, Paul was doing the same. Like, he wanted someone to be like, right, adventure. I don't know. I'm talking for you, but you wanted like, what'd you say? What'd you want? What were you drawing?
I mean, it was all of that. Like I wanted somebody that I could be with 24/7 and never get tired of. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And somebody. I mean, one of the first things that I said to you when we got together was that it makes sense now that I understand my values a little bit better than I did then. But I remember saying that I love to be amazed. Like
Yeah.
I love, and that's one of the things. That's why I've traveled so much, because I think the world and people are amazing, and all of that. And those are the things that you've been able to bring for me, right? So
Yeah.
you've made that happen.
I also wanted to tie back to, there was something Alexis said earlier I just want to tie back to. You said something about the pressure men feel because they feel like they have to have like their finances, the job, and all these things, right? There was something I was thinking about it that I was thinking about jobs, for example, that we start going and relying on metric search and metric satisfaction when we've given up on values alignment. Like, think about it. We're in a job and we hate it. All we care about is the salary and getting more money. But when we love that job, and if you love something, you don't, and it's like a startup, but you love it, you don't care how much money you're getting because you believe in it. And when we focus so much, we start getting on these little metric things when we start believing that the person that we dreamed about is no longer possible. And we need to go back to believing that you can have those things and stop resorting, right, to this like checkbox list, and more about how this person can make you feel and can be, and that you can have this partnership if both people are willing. I mean, Paul talks about it a lot too, because they're like, there are a lot of men who would want the partnership you have right now, and I think they're not communicating it.
I think that's true. I think that's right. I mean, it overlaps with so many other things we talk about, right? About openness and authenticity and vulnerability and all of that.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
Alexis.
And I think really quick, just a quick thought as I'm like hearing both of your accounts, which I love. I think a theme in both yours and Paul's story is that your idea of love expanded. And so,
Yes.
I recently started practicing Qigong, and I have this great Qigong master. And I remember my first class, he is like, all right, if I put salt into a mug, about 8 ounces of water, you're going to taste the salt. You're not going to like it. You're probably going to spit it out, right? But if I put that water into a larger bowl of water, you're not even going to taste the salt. And so when your idea of love is so confined to like this little cup, there's a lot of saltiness and bitterness because, it should be this way. But when you expand your idea of love into something much larger, you don't even taste those bitter moments at all, which I thought was a beautiful way of putting it.
That is beautiful. Exactly.
It comes back to big universe, small universe. We talk about this
Exactly.
Totally. It's really fascinating. So if I'm gonna let Alexis to you coach, right? So I think this conversation started. I'm gonna hand the mic to you, and you can take all the time you want in answering this question. So this comes from like an audience member that's like, I really want. It was a female that said, I really want my Paul. But she feels like she's getting to a certain age and getting really worried, right? And but wants like both things, wants to be able to start like a business and a partnership, and just feels like they're not, like, it's just not happening now. So I'm gonna tell you what I responded, and then I'm gonna give you the audience, right?
And just to be clear, I know that it's super weird, but I know who this person was, and this is actually a real question that we got.
Yeah, we get these questions, right, on Instagram. And my response is, I stopped using the apps and all that stuff at some point because for me, I realized that I needed to be in circles with people with aligned values and people who had that rocket type energy. And I needed to be around circles like that. I wasn't going to find it through technology, but I was going to find it in community events, in fellowships and other things, right? And that's, where we met is in a fellowship that was for service, right? And so I knew that was going to be my vehicle. So my coaching and response was to think about joining groups that have alignment of values and organically, and that we would respond in this talk about that. This podcast. So I'm going to hand it to you, Alexis. You're now you get to be the coach. Which feel free to take the podium however long you want, and feel free to answer this question for our audience member.
Yeah, I guess I would get really curious about, I don't know this person. So I would get really curious and, are you ready to receive love? And what does that mean to you? What kind of love are you looking for? Not just, a Paul, but like, what about Paul? What are these characteristics that you're looking for? I love that you talked about being in spaces where you can find people with common interests and to some extent common values. I think that's really important. I think we leave too much up to technology and we forget that that personal connection will give us more information that we need to get to know a person, and make some decisions about them. But also, I would want to learn more about, what has your dating experience been in the past? How have you learned and grown? And how can we now apply that to the way that you're approaching dating and finding the person that you're looking for in your life? I think that's really important, especially if she's looking for a very particular type of person. And also thinking about what are the ultimate deal breakers and what is something that is totally okay with that you can rock with, because like we've discussed throughout this whole podcast, there's not one person who's going to fill all of your needs and all of those things. That's what I love when you talk about the round table. That's what those other folks are there for and supporting you. And so that's also really big and something that we would have to discuss in a coaching session.
I love that, Alexis, because you're absolutely right? Like, it goes back to that savior thing we were talking about earlier. Your partner's not can't be everything and can't save. Both Paul and I have our own round tables of support that we need from other people with different types of values and superpowers outside of each other, right? And you can't expect, that's why it's good to have like coaches and your friends and your people who will support you during those moments. It can't just be fully on that person. So I love that you said that. And yeah, exactly. And the community matters, right? The values. I mean, Paul and I were friends first for a long time, and like you build on that. We were in the same circle before we even transitioned to anything like that, right? Like learning all these deep things, which made things even more, I think, special in the end, right? You also said something else which I thought was great. It was like, what are those characteristics that you're looking for, and what are those deal breakers? Because are they your deal breakers or society deal breakers? Because I remember when I met Paul, my mom always told me the deal breaker was a man with children before. Paul has 2 kids from before. And the truth is, it wasn't my deal breaker. It was hers. It was her projection. But I thought it was my deal breaker. And I think that's why we were friends for a while before, because I didn't know we didn't know how that would work. And she was right. It was very challenging. Very, very challenging. We went through a lot, but it's temporary. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of like the hard part, right? Because then you start getting into a rhythm, and now we're past the hard part, and that seems like an old memory. It was never my own deal breaker of society's, but I had made it my own. So I love that you said, like, what are your deal breakers? And then I would just ask that question, is it really your deal breaker? Or is that somebody else telling you the deal breaker, right?
Right, let's be honest.
And like yeah, and let's do like circles of like deal breakers, right? Like one's like ultimate, maybe, and then like, maybe I'm fine with it, right? Because it has to be kind of fluid and gray. But I love that. What would you say?
No, it's interesting. Like the deal breaker thing, I think is super interesting because it's almost like the anti-values, right? Like I think that it's like what you were saying earlier. I think the same thing. Like if somebody told me, if I was hypothetically speaking on a date and the person said to me, "Oh man, I want to live in this place for the rest of my life," that is like my anti-value, right? That would be a big red flag for me, right? So the deal breakers are a really interesting sort of back end to a lot of the values that it comes around,
Right, but there was some, like, for example, society ones that you were told too, because when he met me, since I'm younger than him, he thought, oh, like you thought I hadn't traveled that much, or I still had a lot to learn, this and that. And then when we went, like, we were at a bar and talking, he's like, oh wait, I was totally wrong. Like society made me believe that since you were young, you didn't have that, but we have almost equal experience, right? And there's like some things that society might tell you of a certain person and you have to dig deeper. And even in business too, Like, we have been to pitches of young people, like in college,
Yes.
that are phenomenal. Like, I have seen their pitches and I'm like, man, you blow away any 40, 50-year-old I have seen pitching. You know, like, you should have no imposter syndrome, right? And these people sometimes like be open, right? And I think this goes back to what you were saying, be open to age, to different backgrounds, to, your value alignment could be someone from the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. I know we talk about this a lot too, if we were to lose each other one day, right, like a death or something like that.
You talk about that way too often, man, but okay.
That's my worst case scenario thinking, sometimes. And I'm like, I know that, you can't see you. I know that me and Paul and we could meet someone else, right? But then I'm like, I'd have to do like all these years of therapy and coaching with them, and I think I'll just stick to my business relationships if that were to ever happen again, and stick to my round table, just because, so yeah.
I would say, like, with a lot of my clients who are older, like 50 plus, a lot of them say if they were to lose their spouse, they would actually be single because they didn't spend a lot of time being single in their 20s. And so it's something that they would want to go to and explore and do all the things they couldn't before they had a family. So I think that's really interesting.
Interesting.
I could see that.
I don't feel any of that. I did everything I wanted to do in my life. You? Yeah. I think it's more like I would spend it more with my round table. Yeah. I don't know. Invested in my round table. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just don't think that I would prioritize other things.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
We got to experience it.
Yeah.
I know. I bring this up a lot,
Yeah.
but I know it's my own mind being like, I will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes, fear comes in. That's the trauma response, where I'm like, what if I lose Paul? And I have to be like, you're going to be fine, Esther. You have a round table.
I think the openness thing that you were talking about is really interesting too. And I know exactly what you were talking about. We went and we were at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and we were working with their Dairy Institute.
Yeah.
And we saw the presentation from this young woman and her boyfriend. So they were partners,
a young power couple,
partners, and they making this kefir ice cream, which is all irrelevant except for the fact that their presentation was phenomenal.
And they were a power couple at 20.
Phenomenal. They were so good. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that, I was
blown away.
I was, I'm sure I'm older than her dad. I was a professor. I've seen all sorts of things, but you always have to remain open to what's going to amaze you, what's going to blow your mind. You know what I mean?
Because you would have never thought until they got up on stage.
Yeah.
So you have to be open, right?
Yeah.
And that they found each other with similar values, right? And they were both helping each other grow and complementing, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was super nice. That was a really cool couple to work with.
Yeah, so be open.
I was thinking of one other thing, and I know that we're getting close to end of time. I was thinking of one other thing. One of the things that, we've talked a lot about relationships and work relationships and the importance of therapy and things like that. I think one of the things that I would encourage people to do is to also treat their relationship with their coach and therapist just like anything else, because they're people too, and you want to make sure that you have that alignment. And I say that as somebody who has had basically what I would call sort of failed therapy, right? Where I realized that I couldn't get to the level of trust with the therapist, and that I didn't align with the therapist, right? So, and I say that having then eventually found a fantastic one that was very, very much aligned, right?
I worked with the both of us.
Exactly. So
shout out to Mabel.
Exactly. I think that there are a lot of people out there who, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who have been like, oh, I went to therapy and it sucked, and I went to therapy and it didn't work, right? But a lot of it was, it didn't work because you didn't commit to it. But maybe you didn't commit to it because that alignment with that person wasn't there. So I would super strongly... It's like dating. There's nothing weird or wrong or taboo about switching a therapist, finding a different coach,
And just like we're talking about, remember, we talked about that we had an array of coaches. And we still do. There's a coach for every different type of thing. Right? Alexis is like amazing at like getting yourself unstuck, grieve, all that, like you've helped me too. And I have an array, right? And they're different. Everybody has a different superpower that gets you through it. And the therapists are all different types. Some of them are action focused. Some tell you the hard truths. We needed someone to be like, you effed up. And we needed someone to be like in our face, direct, and from Latin America, where they could be more direct. So you
Which
have
was
to know
really funny. It was really funny, because I mean, it's just an interesting anecdote. I don't know to what extent it's a Latin American thing or what, right? But
I don't know.
But I can say that I appreciated that we would be telling her a story of some situation, and she would be like, "Lo hiciste muy mal," like you really messed up. You know what I mean?
But then it was like, okay, let's do a role play. Let's do it again, And it was awesome because it was like we needed that actionable, but still very rooted in therapy, right?
No, of
And
course.
therapeutic things. And then there's coaches. I don't know, Alexis. What do you what do you think about that?
I would say that totally resonates. Relationship, whether that's a friend, whether that's a romantic partner, whether it's your therapist, it really is a numbers game. And I think what's really important about what you said, Paul, is you have to continuously put yourself out there, regardless of knowing that you might not get it on the first try, and being okay with going back out there and really finding that right fit, because it is important if you want to have that impactful relationship and get the growth that you're looking for.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would even say it applies to mentorship. Mentorship. I'm shopping for a mentor, and when you're shopping for a mentor, it's also a lot of work, just like dating. I read their book. I have to study their approach first to see if the alignment before I even find and contact them, right? Because that also, it's who's going to mentor you is also equally about alignment in values and all those type of things too, right? So this applies to everything in life. And yes, it does take some work. I mean, I think people sometimes get tired and they want to take the easy route, but then you miss out on, like you said, the magic. So Alexis, I want to leave the closing to you. Is there anything closing you want to say? Any words of inspiration for folks?
Or anything that you're working on?
Yeah,
how people can contact you?
How people can work with you and all that stuff.
No, definitely. I would say as far as something inspirational, really just keep your heart open, and rejection is actually not a big deal. Rejection, whether it's in business, rejection, whether it's in relationships, it's a space to learn and grow, and just keep your heart big and open, because whatever you're searching for, it's going to come to you, whether it's now or later, but it's going to come to you at the right moment. And, if you want to find me, I am on Instagram and TikTok at the Alexis Marquez. And come and say hi. Let's chat. And yeah, I have a huge love for humanity, and so I love people, and I believe that people can do incredible things.
Amazing. Yay.
I love it.
And we can testify that this is all true. She loves humanity.
She does.
Yeah.
She does.
Yeah.
I just can't teach you how to be a good person.
He's listening so badly.
But then again, he was looking for a savior rather than doing that work himself, right? He can become that on his own. And so I hope that's the lesson he took out of that.
I hope so,
And
too.
then when you become that, you can call her again. Maybe.
Nice. Well, Alexis, thank you so much for being here with us. You are welcome back anytime. I know that this is only the tip of the iceberg of the genius that you have to share with the world. So we really appreciate you being here.
Yes, and so please subscribe, share, like, all those wonderful things, put a review, and I hope this was just what you needed. Bye.
Even my own way. See you right, even on the darkest of days. I trust myself and know my worth. There is nothing but stars behind me. So can we go higher? Can we go higher? Together, we're better to dream bigger and louder. Can we go higher? Can we go higher? Can we go higher? Together, we're better to dream bigger and louder.